Into the Wild by Jon Krakauer is a gripping non-fiction account of Christopher McCandless, a young man who abandoned his comfortable life to pursue an idealistic quest for truth, freedom, and a deeper connection with nature. Adopting the alias Alexander Supertramp, Chris ventured into the wilderness, ultimately meeting a tragic end in the Alaskan bush. Krakauer's book weaves McCandless's story with reflections on other adventurers, philosophical insights, and the allure of the wild, creating a complex portrait of a dreamer driven by conviction and naivety. Early life and discontent. Christopher Johnson McCandless was born in 1968 in El Segundo, California, and raised in a prosperous family in Annandale, Virginia. The son of Walt, a NASA engineer, and Billy McCandless, Chris grew up with material comfort but felt stifled by societal expectations and his parents' strained marriage. An intelligent and intense individual, Chris excelled academically at Emory University, graduating in 1990 with a degree in history and anthropology. However, he was deeply disillusioned with consumerism and what he saw as the hollow promises of modern life. Influenced by writers like Jack London, Henry David Thoreau, and Leo Tolstoy, Chris developed a romantic view of living simply and authentically. He resented his parents' materialistic lifestyle and was particularly disturbed to learn that his father had maintained a secret second family earlier in his life. This betrayal fueled Chris's desire to reject conventional paths and seek a life of purity and adventure. The journey begins. In the summer of 1990, shortly after graduating, Chris made a radical decision. He donated his $24,000 savings to charity, Oxfam, abandoned his car, a yellow Datsun, and severed contact with his family. Adopting the name Alexander Supertramp, he set out to live as a modern-day nomad, unburdened by possessions or obligations. His goal was to test himself against the raw forces of nature and discover a deeper truth about existence. Chris's journey took him across the American West, from Arizona to South Dakota, California to Montana. He embraced a transient lifestyle, hitchhiking, working odd jobs, and forming fleeting but meaningful connections with people he met along the way. Key encounters included Wayne Westerberg, a grain elevator operator in Carthage, South Dakota, who gave Chris work and became a close friend. Westerberg admired Chris's work ethic and intelligence but was puzzled by his rejection of material security. Jan Burrs and Bob, a couple of drifters who met Chris in California and treated him like a son. Jan was particularly touched by Chris's idealism and vulnerability. Ronald Franz, an elderly widower in Salton City, California, who formed a deep bond with Chris. Franz, grieving the loss of his own family, offered to adopt Chris, but Chris gently declined, unwilling to be tied down. These relationships reveal Chris's charisma and ability to inspire others, but also his determination to remain unattached, driven by his singular vision. The Alaskan Odyssey. Chris's ultimate destination was Alaska, inspired by Jack London's Tales of the Rugged North. He saw the Alaskan wilderness as the ultimate proving ground for his ideals of self-reliance and communion with nature. In April 1992, after nearly 2 years of wandering, Chris hitchhiked to Fairbanks, Alaska, with minimal gear, a .22 caliber rifle, a 10-pound bag of rice, a field guide to edible plants, and a few books, including Tolstoy and Thoreau. A truck driver, Jim Gallion, dropped Chris at the Stampede Trail, a remote path near Denali National Park. Gallion was concerned about Chris's lack of preparation. He had no map, no compass, and inadequate clothing for the harsh Alaskan spring, but Chris dismissed these warnings, confident in his ability to survive. Gallion gave him a pair of rubber boots and some food, then watched as Chris disappeared into the snowy trail, carrying a backpack and a radiant smile. Chris found an abandoned bus, known as Bus 142, along the trail. This rusted Fairbanks city bus, left as a shelter for hunters, became his home. He dubbed it the Magic Bus and settled in, thrilled to live off the land. For the first few weeks, Chris thrived, hunting small game like squirrels and porcupines, foraging for berries, and recording his thoughts in a journal. His entries reflect a mix of exhilaration and spiritual fulfillment, as he felt he was living his truest life. The struggle and tragic end. As spring turned to summer, Chris faced mounting challenges. The Alaskan wilderness was unforgiving, and his lack of experience began to take a toll. Game became scarce, and his rice supply dwindled. He relied heavily on wild plants, using his guidebook to identify edible ones, but his knowledge was limited. In July 1992, Chris attempted to leave the wilderness and return to civilization, but the Taclonica River, which he had crossed easily in April, was now swollen with snowmelt. Unable to ford the raging waters, he returned to the bus, trapped by nature's indifference. By August, Chris was starving and weakening. His journal entries grew terse, documenting his hunger and despair. A critical mistake occurred when he ate seeds from a plant he believed to be edible, possibly wild potato, Hedysarum alpinum. Krakauer later suggests that these seeds, if contaminated with a toxic mold or misidentified as a similar poisonous plant, could have caused severe illness, preventing his body from metabolizing nutrients. This led to rapid starvation. In early August 1992, Chris wrote a final note in his journal, "I have had a happy life and thank the Lord. Goodbye and may God bless all." He also left a desperate plea for help near the bus, hoping a passing hunter might find him. On August 18, 1992, approximately 112 days after entering the wilderness, Chris McCandless died alone in the bus, curled up in a sleeping bag. He was 24 years old. Discovery and aftermath. In September 1992, moose hunters found Chris's body in bus 142, emaciated and weighing just 67 pounds. His death shocked those who had known him and sparked intense debate. Some saw him as a courageous idealist who lived his principles, others viewed him as reckless and unprepared, a dreamer who underestimated nature's brutality. Krakauer, who first wrote about Chris in a 1993 Outside magazine article, became fascinated by his story, seeing parallels with his own youthful risk-taking. In Into the Wild, Krakauer investigates Chris's life through interviews, letters, and journal entries, while also exploring the psychology of young men drawn to extreme adventures. He compares Chris to figures like Everett Roos, a 1930s wanderer who vanished in the Utah desert, and even reflects on his own near-fatal climb of Alaska's Devil's Thumb. Chris's parents, Walt and Billy, were devastated by his death and struggled to understand his choices. They later visited bus 142, leaving a plaque in his memory. The bus itself became a pilgrimage site for adventurers inspired by Chris's story, though it was removed in 2020 due to safety concerns. Idealism versus reality. Chris's romantic vision of living in harmony with nature clashed with the harsh realities of survival. His story raises questions about the balance between dreams and practicality. Rejection of society. Chris's disdain for materialism and conformity reflects a broader critique of modern life. He sought authenticity in a world he saw as artificial. The allure of the wild. Krakauer explores why certain individuals are drawn to wilderness, citing its promise of freedom and self-discovery, but also its dangers. Family and forgiveness. Chris's strained relationship with his parents, particularly his anger toward his father, shaped his journey. His story prompts reflection on reconciliation and understanding. The cost of freedom. Chris's quest for absolute freedom came at the ultimate price. The book asks whether true freedom is possible or if it inevitably leads to isolation. Legacy and controversy. Chris's story continues to inspire and divide. Some admire his courage, others criticize his hubris. Krakauer argues that his life, though brief, was profoundly meaningful. Chris McCandless's journey into the wild was a bold, flawed, and deeply human pursuit of truth. His story, as told by Jon Krakauer, is both a cautionary tale and a testament to the power of ideals. Through his triumphs and tragedies, Chris reminds us of the beauty and peril of chasing dreams, the complexity of family ties, and the eternal pull of the unknown. Whether seen as a hero or a fool, Alexander Supertramp left an indelible mark on those who hear his story, urging us to question what it means to truly live. If Chris's story shook something in you, like this video. Comment on what freedom or truth means to you. Share it with someone who dreams of wild courage. And subscribe to Books Unfold for more stories that change us, because we don't just read books, we live their truths. Because the wild doesn't just test us, it teaches us. Let's keep walking, together.